normal burning of, say, paint chips. And those experiments need to be repeated in an inert atmosphere like argon. And I request that Dr. Eric consider doing that test.
4 minutes later.
I was jumping around for joy when I heard Mr. Thomas actually endorsing the application of nanothermite to the World Trade Center. He was admitting that all the characteristics of our findings. He didn't mention that the stuff was reacting to elemental iron, but I assume that is when he characterized this as Semitic paint. This was what David Thomas told us. We called it painted on thermite eventually. So if Mr. Thomas called it Semitic paint, I can easily live with the difference. So I welcome you, Mr. Thomas, on board on the Semitic paint team, and because this was basically what you said.
That's called twisting your words. Wow.
But confirmation bias. That is a class.
I think Richard Gage did a lot better.
Basically, Richard Gage has an organization that makes hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And I encourage Richard Gage to get an independent lab. Doesn't have to be in America if you don't think any American lab can do it. Get a good, reputable, non-European lab to test for thermite.
Okay, up next is Richard Gage. 1 minute.
I'll raise the nanothermite opportunity to Niels. Regarding our income here, it's a common attack, or if you will. I make about half the income I had as an architect, and I'm working about 3 times the number of hours. And one of the
Looks like a smear campaign against Mr. Richard Gage. He's using small excerpts of his debate with Mr. Richard Gage to prove his side.
Somebody the other day asked me, well, what about, didn't they have fire retardants or fire extinguishers on every floor of that building? I don't know.
Not for a plane of 10,000 gallons of jet.
I said probably those fire extinguishers blew up faster than the...
Yeah, probably, yeah.
What's not clear to me, though, is the amount of thermite. How much is there, and how much would be necessary? How much is necessary with the steel? And is that, third question, is that in a lot of construction in every city? Are we all susceptible because there's thermite being used?
It would take like thousands of pounds just for that one radio tower. And there would have been a lot of hardened, melted steel or iron.
And your point was that there was that much there to cause that heat?
My point is that the thermite is way too slow to do a controlled demolition.
Oh,
If they had used thermite, there would have been a lot of melted iron, and there wasn't a lot.
Oh, so it's not thermite. I missed the point.
But the truthers say there's little tiny microspheres of iron, and that only thermite can melt iron to make those little spheres, because to make a sphere, it has to be molten to be round, like a soap bubble wants to be round. And actually, that's not quite true, because if you have enough heat and you apply it to a small enough piece of steel, it'll melt. And so all you have to do to make your own microspheres of iron, iron-rich microspheres, without having thermite and something that burns at thousands of degrees, is to take some steel wool and light it with a big lighter and blow on it, and that creates it burns the steel wool and it melts it and it makes these little microspheres.
How about some rusted steel wool?
Yeah, that even better.
If you were using thermite, wouldn't it, somebody have noticed the
The
building
bright
full of
flashes, it's
people
very
applying
bright.
it?
Yeah,
Yes, they had
you would have seen
done.
it through the debris. Yeah, of course, yeah.
And wouldn't it have added considerable cost to the construction costs and the inspectors would
They would have noticed, well, they say the truthers, it's really hard to pin them down on who did what when. But they say the Ace Elevator Company was doing elevator repair right before the collapses, and that's when they did it. And it's, it's like blood libel on the Ace Elevator. They've done this on national radio.
Did the Ace Elevator Company sue anybody?
Not
Or
yet,
vice versa?
as far as I know. But one of the reasons truthers say it was thermite is there's still molten steel weeks and weeks later. And no, thermite, once it goes till it's done. And it may be slow, but it'll only burn like a few minutes till it's done. It's not gonna be burning weeks.
Weeks later?
And so
That's
saying
what I
that
thought.
molten steel was because of thermite is, well, first off, the reports of molten steel were never really validated by any real person that was an expert in.
May I ask a question? What happened with the follow-up? That they had NASA stuff they advertised that showed those molten pools. What came about of all that? I saw it once, and I never heard about that part of it again.
Most of the pictures of molten stuff could have been molten copper, molten aluminum. Most any burning thing looks like molten iron. So they once over Yosemite, they pushed some burning chunks of trees, a big bonfire, and they pushed it over the cliff, and it looked just like steel. And everybody said, "Whoa, that looks like molten steel." So hot burning things can look like what we think of when we think of burning steel. But the guy Dave Perasa, the sort of chief engineer of the cleanup, he would have been the guy that would have actually gotten reports of, big puddles of, either molten steel or recently molten steel that was hardened. And he never got any credible stuff. And that's why the truthers fall back on microspheres, because that's the only actual melted iron they can document. And the problem with microspheres is, you can make them with a match and just small filaments of iron like steel wool, and B, the fires got hot enough to create more than the usual number of microspheres. But when they tested this, the groups that tested it, the USGS and R.J. Lee group, did testing of the dust. They found that there were microspheres in non-World Trade Center dust and World Trade Center dust, but there was more microspheres in the World Trade Center dust because of the big fires.
Sure.
And because of all the concrete that was disintegrated. One of the components of concrete is fly ash, and fly ash has little iron microspheres in it as a natural component. So for either because of the concrete or because of the hot fires, that was a signature of World Trade Center dust, was more microspheres. But non-World Trade Center dust has microspheres. And you can make them with a match. So it really doesn't prove thermite. So
Well,
that's where it ended up.
Thank you, Dave. That was an excellent presentation.
We'll get the July, August skeptical inquiry, because it goes into the top 3 arguments in some detail.
I want to help you get your equipment together.
Okay, yeah, I gotta make a pathway here. We'll just